Hey everyone, back with more Commander Legends spoilers as the set is coming up really fast. What a crazy year it's been for Magic releases. And this set looks like it's going to be pretty controversial. There's going to be a lot of very powerful cards. Some people are going to be upset. I think most people are going to be overestimating just how good those cards are going to be, but let's delve in. We've got Ravos Soul Tender. For starters, 3 a white and a black for a 2/2 flyer. Other creatures you control get +1/+1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you can return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And that's a solid card. Partner pushes it over the top to the point where it'll probably be one of the stronger commanders you can have. Getting repeated uses of ETBs or dies triggers, anything like that. I mean, that is a very, very strong card. And the small body is probably the only issue there. 5 mana for a 2/2 is not very impressive. But you're pumping the rest of the team, and you're going to get a lot of value out of it, so probably be a lot of fun to play with that one. Root Weaver Druid. For 2 and a green, we're picking up a 2/1 Elf Druid that when it enters the battlefield, each opponent can search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They can put one of those cards onto the battlefield, and the rest under your control, and the rest tapped under their control. Then each player who searched their library this way shuffles it. So that's an interesting group huggish type of card. When you play it, each opponent's going to potentially, they're going to search 0 or 3 lands. So if they search 0, nothing happens. Remember, you can fail to find. Even if it didn't say up to, you could still fail to find. If it just said search for 3, you can just not find it because the library is a private, it is a non-public zone. I don't know if they call it private zone. That actually sounds inappropriate. Maybe there's a different term for that, but it's not public, and you don't actually have to find a card unless, as long as there's a search criteria. So a card like Demonic Tutor says search your library for a card, no matter what. If there's a card in your library, you have to find one. If a card says search your library for an artifact, well, you don't actually have to find one, and that's just kind of a reality of like tournament play. Like somebody could accidentally fail to find one, and like maybe the person just isn't very, very bright and has a hard time finding cards. And at that point, like, it can't be a game loss. You really shouldn't penalize somebody for that. So that's the way the rules are structured. So here, they're going to get a pile of 3 lands. You're going to get 1. They're going to get 2 in some of the crazier games. Or more often than not, you're just going to get a 2/1 for 3. Wild Celebrants. A 3 in red for a 5/3 ETB destroy an artifact. This has got some beef to it, so this can actually cause some damage, destroying a signet or arcane signet, soul ring, anything like that, and also be a viable threat, which I'm really not sure what these games are going to look like. It's not totally clear how Commander is going to end up playing out as a draft or limited set, and my gut tells me that kind of the beefier creatures are going to be relevant, because you're going to need some way to actually finish games when you're starting with 40 life. I mean, you don't want to be chipping away with 2-power creatures. That's going to take forever. This card here, tentatively Soulfire Eruption at 9 mana. You choose any amount of target creatures, planeswalkers, or players, and for each one, you exile the top card of your library. Then this deals damage equal to the exiled converted mana cost. So you're going to be flipping, if you're targeting 10 things, 10 cards, and then on top of it, you can play the exile cards until the end of your next turn. So I suspect that's exactly the type of effect that some Commander players were looking for. Very fun, random, over the top, and can absolutely win games. But, it costs 9 mana, so it should do quite a lot of heavy lifting. Austere Command returns with the, I believe, iconic Masters art, and still going to be destroying creatures with 3 or less or 4 or more. It's a solid card. You're going to be very happy to sleeve this up if your deck can support it, because you can Wrath and sometimes leave some of your stuff around. This guy here, very interesting, Jeskai colors, and let's see, he does tap. Tap, you choose 1, where X is the number of spells you've cast this turn. So you can either scry X, deal X damage to a creature, or gain X life. So this card, if you play a few spells, it's going to be devastating at taking out opposing creatures. I suspect it'll be very good with untapping, and potentially doing infinite damage in a lot of ways. There's a bunch of ways to get infinite storm and this kind of ties right into that. So that's going to be a card that I think some people will have fun building around for just regular constructed commander as well, aside from whatever this limited format ends up being like. Armix Filigree Thrasher. For 2 and a black, we get a 3/2 legendary, and when he attacks, you can discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X/-X, where X is the number of artifacts plus the number of artifacts in your graveyard. So in play plus graveyard, this thing's just going to be murdering things left and right, and it has to be a creature the defending player controls, which is a nice little line of text in there. Because if you did have a weak spot at the table that you could just throw this at where they don't have a blocker and then take down another opponent, that is significantly more powerful, so probably reasonably balanced. Vow of Duty makes its return. Sorry. All right, got the phone under control there. So Vow of Duty makes its return. +2/+2, vigilance, and can't attack you or a planeswalker you control, so you can actually buff up your opponent's creatures to get them to fight each other, is kind of what the intention of these cards are. Vow of Lightning, +2/+2, first strike, same deal. Vow of Flight, flying, and then Vow of Wildness, +3/+3, and trample. It's nice that the green one gives a little bit extra beef, as green really ought to do. Armillery Sphere, 2 casting costs, pay 2, sack it, search for up to 2 basic lands. I think this card's actually very strong. I don't know if people are going to be drafting this or just doing sealed deck, but if it is draft, this is the type of thing that, depending on how strong your table is, you're going to have to adjust your expectations accordingly. If you're at a really weak table, stuff like this may be just there for the taking, whereas stronger tables, mana fixing and mana ramp, they're going to understand the importance of that, particularly now that there's a commander slant on this limited format. So you may need to adjust your expectations in terms of cards coming back around. Perilous Mirror, a 2 casting cost, 1/1 with a shock tacked onto it when it dies. You do 2 damage to any target. See some play in like Pauper, and I mean, it might be fine as a card in your, however large these decks are going to be. They're going to be 60 card decks, I guess. Bitter Revelation, 3 and a black. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 2 life. Just looked up the drafting rules. Apparently, you're going to be drafting 2 cards at a time in this set for expediency, and apparently the singleton rule is not going to apply. You can actually, I'm not even sure what to make of that, so that seems antithetical to what Commander is. But yeah, you can have multiple pieces of the same, multiple combo pieces that are exactly the same, so that is surprising to me. Staunch Throne Guard, 5 casting cost, 2/5 with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. I'll talk about this a lot more in the Pauper video that I'll be making, talking about all of the new commons to Pauper. We'll have some downshifted cards and some newly printed cards, but I mean, giving Tron the monarch is pretty scary. I mean, they don't have that tough a time holding on to it, and I don't know. Like, that is really, really powerful. I think that's going to see a lot of play. We'll see. Tron does incredibly well when it's in the monarch. I've played it a lot. I actually don't play that much Tron and Pauper just because I think it might actually be just the best deck, and I find that people don't really like playing against it. So, like, I can win with other stuff. I'd rather people keep playing, but I think Pauper is kind of a format where people are not going to play the absolute best deck all the time. They're going to play things that they have fun with, which lands it in an interesting place for tournaments. But we'll talk more about that in the other video. Armored Sky Hunter, 3 and a white for a 3/3. A lot of text on this one. It's got flying, which a lot of cats do for some reason. When it attacks, you look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can put an aura or equipment from among them onto the battlefield. If an equipment's put on this way, you can attach it to a creature you control, and you put the rest of the cards on the bottom in a random order. I mean, that's pretty spicy. I suspect a lot of people will be using this in artifact-heavy, equipment-heavy decks, and I've seen a lot of those kind of Voltron-style things where you're piecing together insane combos and just a lot of fun. Whenever this attacks, you're going to be getting another insane piece of equipment in all likelihood, and who doesn't like that? Wrong Turn, very interesting card, 2 and a blue, target opponent gains control of target creature. This type of thing right off the bat kind of gets me thinking about ways to use it. So I like the card design. First thing I think of is like, is there any type of phage style thing, which is an absolute disaster if somebody gets a hold of? Anything that's, when it dies, you lose the game. Those type of things could be really fun. And I would probably take a stroll down Scryfall or the Gatherer and try and come up with some things that would be really fun to kind of give from me to someone else, or probably just have fun with this card, period. It's just a crazy commander card, and I suspect people will really enjoy that one. Blasphemous Act. This card pulls a lot of weight. I think it was the last time I played Commander. I actually saved the table with the Blasphemous Act. Usually if I sit down, I'm just going to be ganged up on immediately, which is honestly just the correct play most of the time. Sat down, somebody had an insane combo ready to go. I basically tagged in for somebody that had to leave, so I picked up their Super Friends deck, which had already committed a bunch of land to the board, but they really didn't have much else going on, and used the Blasphemous Act to save the table, and then over the next few turns got out Sisse, who was their commander, and then built back up and actually ended up winning the game. But Blasphemous Act bought me the table cred to not just be the number one prime target, because I did save the table with this card. And, people a lot of the time don't want to kill you when you just saved them. Like, it's a game, but like in life in general, if somebody gives you something and you're not a psychopath, usually you feel a need to reciprocate that gift giving. That is just kind of a normal, healthy emotional response to somebody giving you a gift, is wanting to give something back. That's how we've kind of evolved. That comes out in games. Sometimes it's the correct thing to temper your more empathetic, humane aspects in game playing if you're just trying to win. And sometimes they're going to hold you back from winning as much as you could. But in general, when you save the table with a card like this, people are not going to immediately want to gang up on you. If you're using this to kind of aggressively wipe the board and then commit your own creatures and get really far ahead, that's a different story. But, this card, very, very good in Commander. Interesting reprint. It spiked way up in value, so expect it to come back down. But we do have these new toys in terms of the full arts and the full art foils and all of that. I actually don't know how to say this one. Kumbaj Witches has been around forever. I rarely say the name out loud, so let me know how that's actually pronounced phonetically if you want. This is actually a really cool printing of the card. Art by Seb McKinnon, which I know I talk about quite a bit on the channel. Big fan of his art. Really beautiful. And, the original art was by the Foglios, or at least one of the Foglios. And just a really fun card. So I love seeing kind of a new take on art that I already liked, but this is done in such a different way, but also an homage to the original, though with a completely different level of sophistication. So the Foglios are illustrators. It's kind of like cartoon style. You can see I should have queued that up for you guys to take a look, but you're on the internet. You can find it. And this really does hold kind of some of the original ideas of the first run of the art, and now just takes it to a whole new level. So really great. Now this is a common in other printing, so this does see play in Pauper, and there is something fun about playing Pauper with cards that are not printed as a common. So I would probably rather play with the uncommon. I do that with rares too. Like there's a bunch of downshifted rares like Mortician Beetle. It's just more fun to play with the rare version in Pauper. I don't know why. Obek Brute Chronologist, a Grixis commander. Doesn't really look Grixis. Feels like it should have some green in here, but it is Grixis. And this Ogre Wizard can tap to end the turn. Whoever's turn it is, they may end the turn. So it's up to them. Very interesting. Odd wording. You can do some kind of group huggish things. Does make it a huge pain to play against. So like from a constructed perspective, having this card out when your opponent is playing blue is awkward, because when you go to cast like an end of turn factor fiction, you can say, yeah, we're just ending the turn now. So you just your factor fiction is just not going to resolve. It's just going to go to the graveyard. That is pretty brutal. Actually, sorry, exile it, even worse. So you're just going to exile the factor fiction. Yeah, I mean, it's something that people will play incorrectly against. That's for sure. And anytime that you're getting effects going, I mean, this is just a powerful tool to be sitting there on board. So even things like fetch lands, if someone tries to fetch during someone else's turn, you could use this to deny the fetch. So very fun, interesting Magic card. This one is a reprint, I think, from like Dominaria. I think the first time it was around. Ancient Animus is just going to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control if it's legendary, and then it fights a creature an opponent controls. So if it's a legendary creature, +1/+1 and fight. Otherwise, just fight. Either way, this is a piece of removal, and so far we haven't seen a ton of removal, and we have seen a ton of legendary creatures. So this will probably be at least as good as it was the first time around in Dominaria, which had a ton of legendary creatures as well. Anara, some type of familiar. I'm not sure what Lobitha means, but this is on your turn, your commanders have indestructible and also has companion. That is pretty savage. That's going to be really good with wrath effects, and it's a 4/4 body for 4. This, so far, I think is one of the stronger commanders that I've seen. I'm impressed with it. Being able to attack with a 4/4 indestructible is often kind of like having a 4/4 unblockable. So if they have smaller creatures, if they don't have something that can just stand right in front of this, then it's basically unblockable. What it kind of ends up working out to, because normally if you have a 4/4 like this, if they have a couple of 2/2s, they could throw it in front. And granted, that sets up issues with removal where they can kill a creature and it's a 2-for-1, but in general, you're taking a risk by attacking. Things can go sideways. Now, I mean, this thing is just fearless. So I'm impressed with this card. I'd probably be keeping an eye out for it if I was drafting, and it's going to be complicated trying to figure out how to draft this set, because like pivoting, like you see a commander, I don't know. It's going to be a fun experience. I wish we were going to be able to do it in store. It's also really difficult to do over the internet. Probably mostly going to end up doing sealed with these, which is too bad because it feels like it's going to be a really sweet draft experience. Hopefully we've got a whole lot of this product available so we can do some drafts sometime next year if we get back to the tables. Court of Bounty, 2 and 2 green. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, as with the other courts. And this one also has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. But if you're the monarch, you can put a creature or land into the battlefield. So a very interesting ramp effect, either committing to the board or getting a creature for free. Either way, green's going to enjoy this card, and being the monarch would mean that you're likely to have a continual stream of lands to just keep putting in. Apex Devastator, really cool art, 10/10 for 10. Cascade, 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 Cascade. Pretty fun. So you're going to get cards off the top of your deck. They have to cost 9 or less, which is really not saying very much, and you're going to just have that happen 4 times. This is an absolutely devastating card. It's fun that Cascade is a cast trigger, so that's relevant. And, you know, you could also hit like Wrath of God effects, which could be kind of clearing the board before this thing comes down. So overall, I think this is an incredibly powerful card. It should be at 10 mana, and we'll just see if that's actually something that ends up being castable in these games, or if people are able to create decks that are actually solid enough to wrap up an actual match. I'm just skeptical. I feel like a lot of these matches are probably going to be kind of staring at each other, building up, and then dropping absolute bombs, and this may be amongst the biggest bombs in the set. Plague Reaver, 3 mana, 6/5. Got to have some type of drawback on here with those stats. At the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice each other creature you control, so he is going to be going it alone. And you can also discard 2 cards, sacrifice the Plague Reaver to choose an opponent, return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep. Interesting. Yeah, it's just a 3 mana 6/5 most of the time. That's not much of a drawback. I mean, I guess it makes it so they can only have this creature. Like, if they really, really, really want to have a bunch of other creatures, but I mean, as far as like efficiency for control, we have a 3-mana 6/5. That's very interesting. I mean, there's like no actual set drawback on here for a control deck that doesn't need other creatures. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a time in Magic where this would have absolutely been insane. Like in the days of Phyrexian Negator, I mean, this thing's pretty crazy. Hans Eriksson, 2, a red and a black for a 1/4. When he attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, attacking the defending player or a planeswalker they control. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. When you put a creature card onto the battlefield this way, it fights Hans Eriksson. So that is a really fun throwback card. It's got Safi in the flavor text, and he's just a 1/4, just a big lovable oaf. And, you know, if it's a small creature, it's going to show up and it's going to bounce off of him. But if it's a big creature, it's going to squish him. And that is just really on flavor. Like, he can handle himself a little bit, but I mean, just like a huge Lurgoth or something showing up is going to be just a massive flavor win for this guy. So fun to have this other piece of that flavor text puzzle that we were shown so many years ago, finally kind of bringing these characters in. I enjoy that aspect a lot. This has a little bit of a feel of Time Spiral to me, where they were doing a lot of throwbacks. And we're right back to the beginning. So I'm just going to keep doing these. If you want any changes to the videos, longer, shorter videos, I don't really know what's optimal. I'm just kind of doing these on the fly as the cards come out. So if you have any recommendations or preferences, go ahead, let me know in the comments, and we'll try and make these as good as we can. Thanks for watching. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.